Hi, welcome to Rules Challenge. My name is Carter Maxwell, and in this episode we're going to be taking a look at the game SETI. Now, as to the game, not much to say in advance before we start the challenge, but I will say that the way I'm handling the aliens might look weird to you. The publishers made an effort to kind of play up the idea of not learning too much about the aliens before you first reveal them while playing in a game. And I'm trying to respect that. So there'll be a point in the game where normally I would turn over the alien board, but I'm just not going to touch those. I won't reveal anything in this video. For those of you who are new to the channel, this is basically a test of your understanding of the rules, but instead of me just asking you questions from the rule book, it'll be like you're watching a real game being played, but between turns I stop and ask legal or illegal, and you have to guess whether what you saw that turn had been done correctly. And then I'll go on and give some explanation as well as the answer. As is usually the case with my videos, the challenge picks up right in the middle of a game. 2 rounds have been completed, and we're just about to begin the 3rd round. White has the start player marker this round, so we'll start things off with him. For his main action, he's going to play a card, and he'll play Space Launch System. That card costs 2 credits, so he'll pay that. And it allows him to launch a probe and move 1 space. He'll place his new probe on Earth, and then before taking his movement, he wants to complete a mission. He has this card here that has triggerable missions when he launches a probe. He's used one already. Now he's going to use this one here that'll give him 1 credit. And so he'll take that. Now he'll use his 1 movement, moving toward Venus. Now White's going to take another free action and complete another mission. This one is a conditional mission, and it shows 3 landers, and it says do not count moons. Checking the planet board, White doesn't happen to have any landers himself. He just has a couple of orbiters, but there are 3 landers. Brown has one on Jupiter, purple has one on Mars, and green has one on Mercury. So he'll gain 1 credit for that. He'll turn the card over as complete, and that will end his turn. White's mistake was in treating the mission on the card she played as having been completed. The conditional mission on this card required 3 landers, and White looked at the board and saw that there was 3 landers in play and thought the condition was met. But unless a card explicitly says otherwise, it's referring to things that you have or that you have done. It's not things that everyone has done all together throughout the game. In this case, 3 landers owned by just anyone is not sufficient. They have to be 3 landers owned by you. All right, moving on to purple. She's also going to play a card for her main action, and she'll play the Kepler Space Telescope. That card costs 2 credits, so she'll pay that. And then its effects are 1 movement and mark 2 signals in a sector with one of your probes. For the movement, she'll move 1 space out to this comet here, which will give her 1 publicity. So she'll mark that. Now she can mark 2 signals in a sector with one of her probes. She only has the 1 probe, so she'll place it in Proxima Centauri here. The first one will go here, which will earn her 2 victory points, and the second one will go right next to it. She'll mark those victory points, 1, 2. She'll put those 2 data in her pool, and now that this card's complete, she'll discard it. Now she wants to take a free action and place data. She has 3 in her pool. The first space will allow her to tuck a card. She doesn't actually want to give up one of the ones in her hand just yet, so she's going to hold off for the moment. She's going to place the next one on this 2 victory point space. She'll mark the 2 victory points, 1, 2, and then she'll put the 3rd one on this space for gaining a card. She wants a card that she can tuck that will give her a credit, So she'll take strategic planning here, and she'll refill the card row right away. And now she'll resolve this bonus that allows her to tuck a card. She'll tuck the card, she'll gain the credit, and that'll end her turn. Purple's mistake was that she didn't resolve the effects in her computer in the proper order. When you place data, you place them left to right, which she did, and you resolve the effects immediately. So when she placed this one here, at that time, she had to decide whether or not she was going to tuck a card from her hand. She could not wait until she resolved a later effect, gaining a card and tucking that card. I want to point out something else from this turn that people are sometimes uncertain about. When Purple tucked the card with the credit icon, it was correct that she immediately gained that bonus. When you tuck a card, you're not only tucking it for future income, but you also immediately get that bonus. The last thing I want to mention from that turn is that you do have to resolve the effects on the card in the order they're shown. So in this case, Purple did it correctly. She had to move and then mark signals in the sector where her probe was. It didn't matter here because she moved her probe within the same sector anyway, but she could not have, for example, marked 2 in the sector, then moved out of the sector because she had to resolve the movement first. Now it's Brown's turn, and he wants to be able to do an analyze data action this turn. So he's going to start things off with a free action to place some data on his computer. He only has 2 data. He's going to place the first one on this space here for gaining 2 victory points. And he'll mark that, moving from 17 to 19. And then he'll place the next one on this open space on the top row, skipping over his energy bonus here. And now for his main action, he'll analyze data, so he'll pay 1 energy for that. He'll clear all the data from his computer. And then he'll place a marker on a blue trace, and this one will give him 5 victory points and a publicity. He'll mark the 5 points, moving from 19 to 24, and he'll gain 1 publicity. And that ends his turn. Brown did everything right that turn, but I do want to highlight something about the computer again. When you gain these tech tiles, you're adding spaces for more data on the bottom row, but these bottom spaces don't have to be filled for you to do an analyze data action. In most cases, people will want to try to fill these bottom spaces for these bonuses, but it's not required. You only have to have the top row filled to do that analyze data action. In this case, Brown happened to decide that it was more important to win the race for that 5 victory point blue trace, so he skipped this bonus space and instead just made sure he got the top row filled, and that's fine. As long as I'm thinking about the player board, something else that I want to mention, when I'm trying to remember the costs of the different actions, I tend to grab the player aid and look it up there, but it's really not necessary. It's all right here on your player board. You've got the cost of launching a probe, researching a tech, playing a card, doing an orbit or a land, a scan, analyze data. So it's all right there. When you've got new players, I would point that out, and it saves them a little time when they're trying to remember what they need to pay for the different actions. All right, now it's Green's turn, and he wants to do a scan action. That will cost 1 credit and 2 energy, so he'll pay that. And then he does have a scan tech tile. This is the one that will allow him to place in a sector adjacent to Earth sector when he does that first placement. For the first placement, he will take advantage of that tech tile, and instead of placing in Earth sector here, he'll place it 1 over in the Barnard Star sector. So he'll place his marker, and he'll place the data in his pool. And then for the second placement, he'll discard this card that allows him to place his marker in a red sector, and he'll place in the Barnard Star sector again. And he'll place the data in his pool. And now he'll refill the card row. Now, since he completed a sector, He needs to resolve that. So he'll move one of his markers up to the victory space, and this one shows that he gains a pink trace. So he'll mark the overflow area, and that'll gain him 3 victory points. 1, 2, 3. Now each player with a marker there gets a publicity. So green will get 1, and brown will get 1. We'll return the extra markers to their owners, except brown, since he got second place, he'll keep a marker there. And then we'll refill the sector with 4 data tokens. Now green's going to take a free action to complete a mission. He's got this triggerable mission here. From when he does a scan, he can gain 1 data. So he'll mark that and add a data to his pool. And then he'll do another free action to complete another mission. This card has 3 triggerable missions when doing scans. So he'll choose this yellow one. He'll put his marker there, and that'll allow him to place a signal in a yellow sector. He'll go with this Kepler 22 sector. Placing his marker there will gain him 2 victory points. So I'll mark those. 1, 2. He'll put the data in his pool, and that ends his turn. Green's mistake was completing 2 triggerable missions with the exact same effect. After doing a scan, he used the fact that he did a scan to complete this one and this one as well. That scan, though, is a single effect. If an effect triggers multiple rewards on your mission cards, you have to pick just one. So after doing that scan, green could have resolved this one or any of these 3, but he had to pick just one of those 4. But I want to be clear that I'm not saying you can't complete multiple triggerable missions on your turn. They just can't come from the same effect. So let's say instead of this card, green had had this card in play. This one he could have triggered because this one is based on having done a scan. This one is based on having placed a signal in a red sector. Those are 2 different effects. So it would be okay to trigger or resolve those 2 missions. I also want to point out something that may have looked incorrect but was done correctly. Green resolved that completed sector before his turn was completely finished, and that's right. You resolve the sector at the end of the main action when it was completed. You don't wait until the end of your turn. All right, now we're back around to white. And white's going to start things off with a free action. He'll spend an energy to move his probe 1 space to Venus, and that will earn him 1 publicity. So he'll mark that. Now white's going to complete a mission. This triggerable mission says when you visit Venus, gain 1 publicity. So he'll mark that. And then for his main action, he wants to research a tech. So he'll spend all 6 of his publicity and then move this marker, which means that he'll need to rotate the top disk on the solar system. So he'll do that. Now he needs to choose a tech tile, and he'll choose one of these scan techs. This one has a 2 VP marker on the top, so he'll remove that and gain 2 points. 1, 2. Now he'll take the tile. That tile comes with a 3 victory point bonus, so he'll mark that. 1, 2, 3. He'll flip the tile and place it on his player board. And that ends his turn. A question I've heard asked several times is when a mission requires you to visit a planet like this card here, is it enough to simply enter the planet's space on the solar system board, which is what white did on this turn? And that is enough. You don't have to place an orbiter or a lander in order to be considered visiting the planet. And I should note that having an orbiter or lander already at the planet at the time you put this card into play doesn't qualify. And it wouldn't count if your probe was already at the planet on the solar system board at the time you put this card into play. You have to put the card into play and then subsequently meet this requirement of visiting the planet. Now purple's up again, and he's going to play a card. He'll play Saturn Flyby. That card costs 2 credits, so he'll pay that. And then to resolve the effects on the card, it allows 3 movement. With the first movement point, she'll move her probe out 1 space to this comet here, and that will earn her 1 publicity, which we'll mark in a moment. And then she'll use the second movement to move to Saturn here, which will gain her a 2nd publicity. And then she'll just skip the 3rd movement point. Now she'll mark those 2 publicity, 1, 2. And the other effect on the card says, if you visit Saturn this turn, gain 6 victory points. And she just did that, so she'll mark those points. Moving from 34 to 40. She'll discard Saturn Flyby, and that'll end her turn. This was a pretty simple turn, but it's a good opportunity to point out that as a general rule, effects are mandatory. So if you play a card that shows an icon for rotating the solar system, then you have to rotate it. If it shows placing a signal in a sector, then you must place a signal. But there are some effects that are optional. Like we saw here, this card gave a purple 3 movement. Movement, you don't have to use it, any of it or all of it. So it was fine that she only moved 2 spaces, even though the card effect gave her 3 movement points. Another effect that is always optional is tucking a card, like on your computer. When you place a data here that shows the tuck a card icon, you don't have to tuck a card. It's an option at that point. Now that said, if for some reason you aren't able to resolve an effect, that doesn't prevent you from taking the action. In that case, you would just resolve as much of the effect as you can. Now Brown's up, and he's also going to play a card, and that will be the Allen Telescope Array. That card costs 2 credits, so he'll pay that. And that card allows Brown to discard 2 cards from the card row and place signals in the matching sectors. First, he'll discard this one, which will allow placement in a red sector. And he'll go with a Barnard Star, which will gain him 2 victory points. 1, 2, and he crossed a milestone, so he'll need to remember to mark that. And he'll add the data to his pool. Then he'll refill the card row. Now for his second placement, he wants to use that card he just drew, and that will allow placement in a black sector, so he'll discard that. He'll place a marker in Vega and place the data in his pool, and he'll refill the card row. The last effect on the card says, if you complete at least 1 sector this turn, gain 1 energy. Brown didn't manage to do that, so he'll just go ahead and discard that card to complete that action. Now he needs to mark a gold scoring tile, so he'll mark this one here. And that ends his turn. The first time I played this game, I made the same mistake Brown did, and that's refilling the card row between resolving these 2 actions. You know, the rules for a normal scan action have you refill the card row after discarding a card, so I just assumed that I should immediately refill it after each of these discards. But the FAQ is clear that you discard all the cards you want to use, then you place the signals. You don't get to refill between those placements. So Brown should have chosen 2 cards, discarded them, and then placed in the sectors that match those 2 cards. Now it's Green's turn, and for his main action, he's going to play a card, and he'll play the Herschel Space Observatory. That card costs 1 credit, so he'll pay that. And then the effect is, place a signal in a sector with one of your probes. He has a probe in Procyon sector, so he'll go ahead and place it there. He'll place the data in his pool. And now he wants to do a free action, completing the conditional mission on the card he just played. That says, have a signal in 4 different sectors. Looking at the solar system, he sees he has a marker here, 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 and here, for a total of 4. The reward on that card is 2 publicity. So he'll mark that, 1, 2. He'll flip the card over to indicate the mission's been completed. And I'm just going to tuck it under here to get it out of the way. And that completes his turn. I've heard a lot of questions relating to what green did wrong on this turn. There are a few conditional missions that require that you have a signal in a sector. A marker in the victory spaces of a sector is not a signal. So, for example, this marker right here. Markers are signals only while they are in the data slot of a sector, like this one here. Once they're moved to the victory area, they're no longer considered a signal. So when green attempted to complete the mission that required she have a signal in 4 different sectors, she actually only had 2, because 2 of the ones she counted were in these victory spaces. Now it's White's turn, and he wants to play a card. He'll play the Large Hadron Collider. That card costs 3 credits, so he'll pay that. The first effect is to gain a data, so he'll take that and add it to his pool. Then he needs to rotate the solar system. He'll move the marker, and that crossed the orange icon, which means he needs to rotate the middle disk. So he'll do that. And that pushes Brown's probe onto this asteroid field. Brown happens to have the tactile that gives 1 publicity when moving into an asteroid field. So he'll gain 1 publicity for that. And now White gets to gain a computer tech. And he'll opt for this one here. It doesn't have a 2 victory point token on it, but it will come with 1 publicity right away. So he'll mark that. He'll flip the tile and place it into an open slot of his computer. He'll discard the card he played, and that ends his turn. White did everything correctly, but there are a few things worth highlighting from this turn. Let's talk about the simplest one first. If you play a card for a research a tech effect, and it shows an icon for rotating the solar system, you rotate the solar system just once while you're resolving the card. That rotation icon is just there as a reminder that you need to rotate the solar system before taking the tactile. It's not telling you to do a rotation in addition to the one that you do normally when you take a tactile. Next, let's look at how Brown gained 1 publicity when he was pushed into that asteroid space. Now this creates a fair amount of confusion, I think, because the use of the word move on the player aid suggests that you only get this bonus here when you are actively or deliberately moving into an asteroid space. And people often wonder, well, does being pushed into the space count? But the FAQ does clarify that being pushed into the space does qualify as movement for this bonus. Now it's Purple's turn, and she wants to land for her main action. And she has the tactile that allows her to land on a moon, and she plans to take advantage of that. Her probe is on the Saturn space of the solar system, and so she'll move her probe over to Saturn on the planet board. Purple wants to land on a moon of Saturn, Enceladus. There is an orbiter at the planet already, so instead of paying 3 energy to land, Purple will pay just 2. And then landing there will gain Purple 12 victory points. So she'll mark that, moving from 40 to 52. And she crossed a milestone, so she'll need to remember to mark a gold scoring tile. And then she can place 3 signals, 1 in a red sector, 1 in blue, and 1 in yellow. For the red signal, she'll place in Proxima Centauri. For the blue, she'll place in Procyon, which will earn her 2 victory points. So we'll mark that. 1, 2, 2. And for the yellow, she'll place in Kepler 22. She'll place those 3 data in her pool. Now purple wants to take a free action and complete a mission. And this card here requires a lander or orbiter at Saturn, including moons. And we just saw her do that, so she'll gain 4 points. Flip this card over. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now she needs to resolve having passed that milestone, so she'll place her marker, and that will end her turn. There were a couple things from this turn that I want to highlight. One is it was correct that purple only paid 2 energy to land on Enceladus. When there's an orbiter at the planet, the discount for that when you land applies whether you land on the planet itself or one of the moons. Another thing I want to highlight from this turn is this mission that purple had completed for having a lander on a moon of Saturn. It said on Saturn, including moons. So it was pretty clear in this case that this was allowed. But there are a couple cards in the game where they forgot to make that clarification. And this is mentioned in the FAQ. It's cards 58 and 60. It was intended that you could have an orbiter or lander on Uranus or its moons, or Neptune or its moons, but they forgot to add that text on those 2 cards. So that's something you just want to make a mental note of. Now it's Brown's turn, and to start things off, he's going to do a free action, buy a card. So he'll spend 3 publicity, and he'll take a card from the card row and refill it right away. For his main action, he'll play that card he just bought. That card costs 2 credits, so he'll pay that. And it says, choose up to 3 probes, yours or other players. For each probe, mark a signal in its sector. He's hoping to complete this Kepler 22 sector, which needs 2 additional signals. But there aren't any probes on the solar system board, but it is in Saturn's sector. He double checks Saturn and sees that both purple and white have probes there. So he'll place his 2 markers here. For the third one, he'll place it in Vega, where he has a brown probe, and that'll earn him 2 victory points. 1, 2. He'll place those 3 data in his pool. He'll discard the card. Now he needs to resolve this completed sector. He has the majority at 3, so he'll move a marker to this victory track since purple's already claimed this one. This will gain brown 3 victory points. 1, 2, 3. Everyone with a marker in the slot gains 1 publicity. So that'll be brown, green, and purple. We'll return the markers to their owners. Purple got 2nd place though, so his will stay. We'll refill the sector with data. And that ends Brown's turn. Brown's mistake was that he treated landers and orbiters as if they were probes. Recall that the Great Observatories Project card said that you could use probes, but when a probe becomes an orbiter or a lander, it's no longer a probe. It's something different. So these 2 didn't actually qualify to be used for this card. Now it's Green's turn, and she's going to start out with a free action. She's going to discard a card for its free action, and that card will give her 1 movement. She'll move her probe out 1 space to Jupiter, and that will earn her 1 publicity. She'll mark that. For her main actions, she's going to orbit, which will cost her 1 credit and 1 energy. Then she'll move her probe from Jupiter on the solar system board to the planet board. That will gain her 3 victory points. 1, 2, 3. She'll gain 1 data and place it in her pool. She'll place it in her pool. And now she realizes she needs to make room before the next data comes in. So before she finishes resolving the orbit action, she's going to take a free action and place data. And she'll move 1 out here to this space, which will gain her 2 victory points. 1, 2. Then she gains a signal in Jupiter's sector. Jupiter is in Procyon sector, so she'll place her marker there. She'll place the data in her pool. And finally, she can tuck a card. She's going to tuck this card for a card draw. She'll take 1 from the deck, add it to her hand, and that ends her turn. Remember that you can interrupt your turn to do a free action. So it was fine that green, during the middle of resolving an action, did that free action to place data and make room for new data coming into her pool. All right, I think I'm going to wrap up the challenge there. I hope you got something out of it. If you think I got something wrong or just have a question, don't hesitate to leave a comment. Again, I'm Carter Maxwell. This has been Rules Challenge, and I hope to see you for the next video.